Gabrielle Bonaire Chanel, or as most of you may know her as, Coco Chanel. Coco was a survivor. She endured dozens of hardships throughout her life, but beyond that, Coco created something amazing, and it still impacts the fashion industry today. And she didn't get there by luck. She got there through hard work and determination. To fully appreciate Coco Chanel, we must start from the beginning on August 19th, 1833, in Loire Valley of Saumur, where Gabrielle Bonaire Chanel was born. Coco was born into the world with her father absent and little to no family at all. The home life Coco grew up in was horrendous. She was born into one of the worst classes of poverty you could be a part of at the time. Coco's mother was unable to properly name her after giving birth to her, so the nuns at the church where she was born named her for her mother. They chose the name Gabrielle, meaning God is my might in Hebrew. However, on the birth certificate, since most of them were illiterate, they spelled Chanel wrong. Even though Chanel's father was hardly there, that didn't stop her mother from tracking him down and getting pregnant again. After the fifth child, Coco's mother realized she couldn't take care of her children. Coco and the rest of her siblings were shipped off to her uncle Augustine's house. They lived with him for about 2 years, and for the first time in Coco's life, she and her sister Julia and brother Alphonse attended school. Coco was roughly around the age of 5. Sadly, this did not last long. Eventually, her mother came back with another child that she had given birth to while away. But her mom just came to drop off the child and take her oldest 2 children with her to go find her husband again. This was probably one of the worst things that happened to Coco, and we wonder what would have happened if she would have stayed with her uncle. But this is where it all started. Coco and Julia were taken 150 miles away from the rest of their family, and the only secure home they have ever truly known. Although they were successful in finding their dad, he didn't care to be around them. Now, due to all the back-to-back pregnancies Coco's mom has been enduring, her body was run down and she was gravely ill. Coco remembers her mom coughing up blood ever since she was a young child. On February 16th, 1895, Coco was 11 years old when her mother died. Unfortunately, Coco and her sister Julia most likely witnessed their mother dying. When word of her death spread, Coco's father came back to round up the children and tried to have his parents take care of them. However, his parents already had 19 children, and their hands were quite full, so he abandoned them. His 3 daughters were taken to a convent called Ubazzini. Her father promised to be back for them, but they never saw him again after that. When asked about this, Coco said, "They tore everything away from me, and I died. I knew that at 12 years old, one can die many times in the course of a life, you know." Coco spent most of her childhood in the convent. The nuns raised her and taught her how to sew. With this newfound skill, Coco was able to find a job as a seamstress. When she wasn't working, she would go to a cabaret and sing. That is where she gained her nickname. There, Coco met Bourgeois and Chin Balsan. Their relationship would be taboo, exchanging love for money, but Coco knew she would be safe with him. This went on for 5 years until 1910, when she met Captain Boy Capel, an English polo player, and fell in love. She left Balsan and moved in with Boy. With his status and influence, Coco opened up a boutique in 1913 and became a hat maker. On the side, she also created women's dresses. Soon, everyone wanted a Chanel dress, and her designs were simple and turned a women's silhouette from an hourglass into a more straight close cut. In 1919, the love of Coco's life, Boy Capel, died in a car accident. This tragedy had Coco start playing around with black clothing. It is said that Coco wanted everyone to wear black to mourn the loss of her love. Eventually, this led her to throwing herself into her work and creating things that are still around today. The black clothing gave Coco the inspiration into making the little black dress, and along with the birth of the little black dress came Chanel No. 5, a famous perfume that is still one of the best-selling perfumes in the world today. Coco stated that, "I always launch my collection on the 5th day of the 5th month. So, the number 5 seems to bring me luck. Therefore, I will name it number 5. The Chanel fashion house was in full swing. Her suits, dresses, and perfumes were being sold like crazy, and everything was going great for Chanel. But nothing good lasts forever. World War II broke out shortly after that. During the First World War, Coco was able to keep making clothes and was undisturbed. But, as we all know this war is much more serious. When the Nazis invaded France, Coco went back to her old ways. Just like the slipcover assignment we did where we had to cover up 5 pages in our sketchbooks, most of the time when we put the slipcovers on the pages, we tend to like them more. Because of Coco's harsh childhood, she had to cover up that part of her life to be more appealing to society. However, when the war broke out, that slipcover on her life fell. She was a survivor and was going to do whatever was necessary for her to live. During the war, Coco became the lover of Walter Friedrich Schellenberg, a German SS Brigadeführer. She used him to keep her safe, but in return, Coco would also aid the Germans in the war, becoming a traitor to her country. As much as I would love to paint a beautiful picture of Coco, she has done many things that prevents that. Coco wasn't loyal, and when she realized that the Germans weren't going to win the war, she spilled all their secrets to the French resistance. However, when the war was over, Coco wasn't out of the clear. In Paris, the traitors of the war were being thrown out into the streets, where their heads would be shaved and they'd be paraded around, and would sometimes end up being hung. But when they came for Coco, she went with them without a fight. Coco was only held for a couple hours before being let go. Just like in the TED Talk we watched, The Pattern Behind Self-Depiction, Coco had to make a decision that would define the rest of her life. As Michael Shermer explained, she could either make a type 1 error, also known as a false positive, where she believed that there was a problem when there really wasn't, or a type 2 error, where she doesn't think that there's a problem when there really is one. Coco went with type 1. With all the Americans in Paris trying to clean up from the war, she took this opportunity to prepare her escape. For the next 2 weeks, Coco opened the doors to her fashion house and invited in the American soldiers to have free bottles of Coco Chanel No. 5 to bring home to their loved ones. In the midst of all this chaos, Coco packed up her things and left for Switzerland. There she'd spend the next 10 years keeping a low profile. It wasn't until 1940 when a spark ignited in Coco. During this time, Christian Dior was taking over the fashion world, creating a new look for women that used an abundance of fabric and given women an over-the-top glamorous look. In our sketchbooks, we had to put 5 ideas of what we thought art was. One of mine was a dress Dior created during this time. He felt that women needed to look innocent and as feminine as ever to help with the recovery from the war. Coco said, "Fashion has become a joke. The designers have forgotten that there are women inside the clothes, and clothes must have a natural shape." Coco was so frustrated with Dior that at the age of 71, she decided to come back to the fashion world. The world rejoiced and was excited to see what she would do. Coco showed her comeback line on February 5th, 1954. The collection had 130 items. They were skirt suits, simple black dresses, and blouses. Sadly, the French rejected this, for it was just like the ones she had shown back in the 1930s. Coco took the backlash in stride. She said, "People no longer know what elegance is. When I work, I think of the women I try to dress, not the couture houses. Once I helped liberate women. I'll do it again." A few weeks after her collection showed in France, the news had finally reached America, where they fully embraced the looks Coco had come up with, and was able to forgive her for her controversial background, more than the French could. By March of the same year, Coco was all over American newspapers and magazines. The women rejoiced in the designs of Miss Coco Chanel. Some famous American women who endorsed and loved Coco Chanel was Marilyn Monroe, who loved Chanel No. 5, and First Lady Jackie Kennedy, who was always seen wearing a Chanel suit. Coco is an iconoclast because she completely changed the way women dress. Twice. She changed the silhouette of women's suits from an hourglass figure to a more straight and close silhouette, making the women more masculine. How this relates back to me is because I am a textiles and apparel major. I'm also on the speech team here at UNI, and when I compete, I spend all weekend in suits. I could not imagine what it would be like to have a suit that conforms my body into an hourglass for 3 days. I am extremely grateful that Coco Chanel reinvented the women's suit, and her style is still being used today. Along with her signature little black dress in Chanel No. 5, and of course the Chanel suit, these three things will continue to flourish in the future.